Namaskar. A very warm welcome to Sansad TV. I am Deepika Dhanda Singh. As India celebrates a key milestone in its G20 presidency, the 18th G20 Head of State and Government Summit, which is scheduled to be held in New Delhi on September 9 and 10, is being attended by several world leaders who are a part of this grouping. As the summit approaches, we are honored to engage in a conversation with the esteemed ambassador of Argentina. With the G20 summit having taken place in Buenos Aires in 2018, making it the first in South America, Argentina holds a unique perspective on the importance of this platform. India and Argentina are two diverse nations geographically separated by vast oceans. Bilateral relations between the two nations have existed for decades, but over the years, these countries have witnessed a gradual evolution in their ties. Both countries are members of G20, Group of 24 and Group of 77. India-Argentina relations were elevated to the level of strategic partnership during the state visit to India of the President of Argentina in February 2019. Multifaceted relations between the two countries have strengthened over the years and encompass political, economic, cultural, scientific and technological cooperation. India opened a trade commission in Buenos Aires in 1943, which was later converted into one of the first embassies of India in South America in 1949. Argentina had established a consulate in Calcutta in the 1920s, which was transferred to Delhi as an embassy in 1950. Argentina opened a consulate general in Mumbai in April 2009. India's stature as Argentina's fourth largest trading partner highlights the robust economic bonds shared between these two countries. The volume of bilateral trade touched a historic peak to $6.4 billion in 2022, setting the stage for even more profound cooperation. India-Argentina bilateral trade during the fiscal year 2022 to 2023 was $4.16 billion, with India's exports to Argentina valued at $961 million and Argentina's exports to India valued at $3.20 billion. In February 2023, a groundbreaking agreement in the defense sector was signed between the two nations for the supply of helicopter spares and engine maintenance between Hindustan Aeronautics Limited and the Argentine Air Force. Rapid strides are being made in science and technology. ISRO and its Argentina counterpart CONAI are engaged in discussions to explore potential opportunities for expanding space cooperation between the two nations. India and Argentina have also reaffirmed their commitment to further deepening and diversifying their bilateral cooperation, expanding it in new domains by broadening their strategic partnership to address global challenges like health emergency, climate change, and terrorism. Argentina and India have a great relationship, and to talk about it all in the context of G20, we have a very special guest with us. Ambassador of Argentina to India, Dr. Hugo Javier Gobbi. Welcome to the show, Ambassador.
Oh, thank you. It's a great honor to be here with you.
According to you, in your own words, I quote, "We not only feel welcome when we come to India, but we also feel at home." What prompted you to say that?
Well, because it's the truth. That's how you, first of all, you have your, the motto of one world, one family, one future, and a family has a home. And and when you come to India, you feel that warmth from the people. You feel really at home, and you feel welcomed, and you feel so. It's really it's that feeling that brings all the delegations to have when they come to India.
Master, what is your experience of the G20 presidency in India?
Well, India has proposed a very inclusive and a very ambitious agenda. Very inclusive because it has, before even at the beginning of the G20's presidency, it called all of the countries of the global south with an open mind, and it went and didn't go and tell them what they should do. It went and asked them how we can help and what are your needs. And India incorporated in a very generous and humble way, incorporated all those ideas to put forward a very significant global South agenda.
In 2018, Argentina held the G20 presidency, and there were a few priorities which were set for a sustainable future. How many of those priorities have been met by the G20 nations, and what are the key takeaways for India?
Well, the environments were, when Argentina had the presidency and the one India has, are very different. It wasn't easy in Argentina's case because many meetings, G7 meetings even, did not arrive to a declaration. They were blocked by differences. But the geopolitical situation nowadays is much more difficult than it was in 2018, and we just came out of the COVID crisis. So the urgency and the problems are much larger, actually, and I think that makes it a more urgent agenda to put forward.
All right, now talking about economic growth, what can G20 countries, or how can G20 countries collaborate to promote inclusive economic growth and reduce inequality among nations, both domestically and internationally?
Well, to reduce inequality, you need an environment that allows that to happen, an international environment that allows that to happen, an open international trade system, how do you call it, transfer of technology, financing for infrastructure, many things that are needed in the international environment that, of course, would facilitate the development of countries. Of course, there's many other policies that are done internally, but without that international environment, it's very difficult to move forward and develop one's country.
For emerging countries like Argentina, to achieve sustainable development is very challenging. So how can G20 countries strategize to address those challenges?
Well, the G20 is a coordination system that puts policies and recommendations that go throughout the system of international organizations and systems. And many of those policies afterwards are followed up internally by the countries. So I think that's how the system works a little bit, and how it allows to move faster in the development process.
All right, now talking about trade and investment, India and Argentina have old trade ties. India is a big manufacturing hub. Recently, Royal Enfield set up a plant in Argentina to manufacture its motorcycles. So in future, what new avenues do you think that India and Argentina can explore?
Well, Argentina and India's trade has been growing very fast in the last 2 years and the last 3 years. Last year, it grew both ways, 70%. Article is one of the fastest growing trade relations in the world. And I think that's very significant because it went both ways, not only exports from Argentina to India, but exports from India to Argentina. And also there has been two-way investments, and that will facilitate afterwards, consolidate the flows of trade. And you have companies like UPL who have invested in Argentina in the technology area for the seeds producing. You have manufacturing enterprises. You have Argentinian enterprises that have taken advantage of India's capacity in IT. For example, there's a company called Globant that has, Argentinian company called Globant that has invested, that has more than 4,000 engineers working here in India. So those relations are consolidating and expanding, and investment has a big role to play in that field.
Ambassador, how does G20 enable an open, fair trading system while safeguarding the interests of emerging economies like Argentina?
Well, the G20, it gives guidelines to all of the negotiations that take place in other forums, in the WTO, in other forums. And one thing that the G20 is, and emerging economies and developing economies are trying to have is an open, fair, and inclusive trade system. What does that mean? That means, how do you call it, that we have to reduce fragmentation in the world economy. So countries can buy where it's cheaper and sell where the customers are and there's many tendencies that are creating protectionism and that are reducing that space for developing countries. For example, one of the tendencies is protectionism linked to environmental issues. How do you let some developed economies are using environmental issues actually to protect their markets. Then there's other things that are happening. For example, industrial policies, aggressive industrial policies. What does that mean? That many developed countries are trying to bring back to their countries their global value chains and bring back investment to their countries. And how do you call it? But those investments are needed to create jobs in developing economies. So it goes in another way. Then a third area, how do you call it, is the geopolitical tensions. The geopolitical tensions also create fragmentations because there are sanctions one way and another, and unilateral sanctions that are totally. So what we need is to go back to the WTO, to respect the rules that were agreed within the WTO, to strengthen the mechanisms that exist, to have negotiations in agriculture, which is so important for developing economies, and to have a system that solves differences within the WTO that is agreed. And so I think what we have to go back is to the multilateral system and to an open trade system for everybody. And also to take into account the different capacities. It's very important to keep the principle of having a favorable treatment, especially for low-income countries.
Yes, I totally agree. Now, shifting focus to gender equality and employment, what measures has Argentina taken to include women in its workforce and give them positions of responsibility?
Well, this is a process, a long process, and we have quotas in the parliament, in our Congress. We have many measures that are being taken into account. So the women population can show all their capacity and all of their skills. And it's not only women who have to be incorporated. There's so much youth and so much people that need to have proper education, proper health care, and to be incorporated into the system. And that will be of enormous economic impact for the world.
What experiences can you share with the other G20 nations to help them promote gender equality and employment?
What experiences? Well, in policies, you can never have a policy that works for everybody. Countries have totally different situations, internal situations, and cultural situations. And so one has to look at it with humility. We can share what we are doing and see what your society would accept and would like and would be favorable. I think it is important that every country pushes forward policies that are favorable for the inclusion of women in the labor force and to have full opportunity and be recognized equally. But it's difficult to say, oh, you have to do this and you have to do that. And actually, we would not dare to do that.
42% of women in the parliament of Argentina. I mean, That's amazing. That's an amazing fact. So now talking about
We
global
have quotas there. That's why, how do you call it? That helps. That helps. But every country has to find its way.
Yes, I totally agree. Now, talking about global health, in the recent times we've been through health crisis. So how can G20 work better to address situations like pandemics and to ensure that every citizen gets a fair chance to getting vaccines and medical supplies?
Well, in that area, India had played an extraordinary role as the pharmacy of the world and producing vaccines for everybody and being very generous and sharing its vaccines and things. Unfortunately, in that area, the coordination within the G20 and in the world was not very good. And many poor countries were unable to get vaccines. Not everybody worked generously like India did, and some countries, they thought only of themselves, and some people only thought only of themselves, and they didn't realize that actually was a common challenge, because if your neighbor has COVID, the possibilities of you having COVID are much larger, and it needed a more global policy in that area. But I think we learned, and there's a lot of cooperation developing in the vaccine field and in the medical field within the G20 now, and I think we will be better prepared for future crises.
All right. Now, India and Argentina are continuously growing. How do you see their roles in forums, international forums like the G20 and BRICS?
Well, Argentina and India have, first of all, they have a regional significance, which makes them an important player. And they have the responsibility of pushing forward aspirations and ideas and interests of their whole region. And India plays a very insignificant leadership role, just because of its size, population, and its economic driving force. And Argentina plays a role in some technological areas. It plays a significant role as a food producer. We are 45 million people, but we produce food for 450 million people. So Argentina is a significant player in the food security sector, and and there's also a commonality of values between Argentina, because we're both democratic countries, and so we share values, and we also share interest in the international field. So in many of these forums, like the G20 and the BRICS now that we were recently invited to participate, the coordination will flow very easily, and we will have a stronger voice if we're together.
Excellent. So India has recently announced significant space reforms.
Oh, yes, yes.
So do you think it opens options for India to collaborate with other G20 nations, specifically Argentina?
Well, Argentina and India are already exploring and advancing in bilateral cooperation. India has, within the BRICS summit, it has invited the other BRIC countries to participate in the space technology, in the space cooperation, and India has so much to share. It is one of the most important and significant players in the space sector, which will have extraordinary economic significance. Argentina can make a big contribution. We build satellites. We have an enterprise that's called INVAP that is doing incredible work in this area. We sell images from our satellites. So the possibilities of cooperation are very, very great.
So happy to know that. Now, on a lighter note, Ambassador, everyone in India knows Messi. So do you think sports can actually break cultural and regional barriers?
Well, they do. How do they do? The love we receive from India, from people who have never been to Argentina because of football, is incredible. And that brings curiosity to both places. People in Argentina want to come to India because they know of India's support and love for Argentinian football. And people from India are curious and say, I want to go to see football in Argentina or see Argentina, which is such a faraway country. And there's so much incredible appreciation and empathy in that relation thanks to football.
Do you see a future collaboration of India and Argentina on this front?
Oh yes, I think in sports is an area that will bring people together, and sports has it's not only good for the health of the people, it's good for the getting people together, it's good for developing good attitudes in young people, but it also is an industry. It creates jobs and opportunities for millions of people. So I think working together in this field will help both our developments.
We'll definitely see a collaboration. On that note, thank you so much for your time, Ambassador, and thank you so much for your valuable insights.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, that's all for now, but do stay tuned to Sansad TV. I'm Deepika Dhanda Singh signing off. Namaskar.